My books have these glossy covers, so they just never.
I know,
they're
right?
always.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me just get Facebook up, but it looks like we are streaming live, so we can get started. Hi, welcome to the Escondido Public Library Virtual Author Chat Series. Today's chat is in partnership with Mysterious Galaxy Bookstore, where you can purchase books by the authors. So please head over to their website and check that out. I'm your host, Jessica Buck, and today I am chatting with authors Chantel Acevedo, Ashley Herring Blake, who will be here soon, and Sam Subity, and about their use of folklore and mythology in their books. So welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so excited to chat with you guys. I know, Sam, we've had you before and it was a lot of fun, and I'm excited to chat with Chantel as well.
You too,
Absolutely.
Jessica. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, glad to be back.
Yeah.
And for everyone watching, I'm going to be looking at the comments. So if you have any questions for the authors, feel free to add those and we'll get them answered as they pop up. And just before we get to the questions, I just want to quickly define folklore and mythology, because I realize maybe it's been a while since college, or maybe you don't read a lot and you aren't sure like what the difference is and what they are. So I'm just going to quickly, very briefly, basically define them for you. So folklore is the traditional beliefs, customs, and stories of a community passed through the generations by word of mouth. So in a lot of books, you'll hear about the folklore, but it's the characters kind of talking about it. And then mythology, collection of myths, especially one belonging to a particular religious or cultural tradition. So Disney plays a lot with the myths, and then a lot of the fairy tales kind of have basis in folklore, because it's people, the folk, and then the lore is the story. So there you go. So let's just start with, tell us a little bit about you and your journey to becoming a writer. And why don't we start with Sam?
Yeah, so I'm Sam Subity. I wrote a book called The Last Shadow Warrior, which is right here. And this is my debut book for middle grade readers. And it's about a 12-year-old Viking who has to save her school from creatures out of Norse mythology. So I've got a ton of like Norse mythology worked in there, also Beowulf elements, because it's kind of an modern update of Beowulf. So this is my first book. And so I've been writing for quite a long time. And it didn't really kind of come to kids fiction until about 3 or 4 years ago. I had kids, and that kind of reminded me of how much I loved kind of the genre and all the humor and adventure in kids books. And so that got me thinking, well, maybe I should try to write a kids book and see how that works after writing all these years and, not being able to, find my story. So that's where I came to kind of put together this story of Beowulf that I had read in college. And I came across this article online where they had found, like, the archaeologists had found the foundations of the Hall Heorot, where Beowulf supposedly lived in the stories. And it got me thinking, wow, what if some of this was actually true? And then spinning it into, well, what if he had a great-great-granddaughter who's also a monster hunter and fights Grendels, and she lives like right now? So that's kind of the what if scenario that got me writing this book. And so that's where it came from. And so I'm just happy to be here and talking about mythology today with you guys.
Yes, thank you. I'm so happy that you're here too. And Chantel, the same question, a little bit about you and your journey to becoming a writer.
Yeah, sure. So this is Muse Squad is I should show you. Muse Squad is my first book for middle grade readers, and its sequel is the second Muse Squad. This one is the Cassandra Curse, and this is the Mystery of the 10th. So these are my first kid lit books. Before that, I'd written 4 adult novels, mainly historical in scope, but not mythological. Right? These are stories about Cuban history and Cuban American history, because that's my heritage. I think similarly to Sam, I came to thinking about writing middle grade because my kids were asking, my own kids were asking, well, when are you going to write one for us? Like a book that we could read, or a story that we would enjoy. And I started to sort of seriously think about what might that story be. I did teach high school for a long time. I teach at the university level now, but I taught high school and middle grade for a long time too. So it was always sort of in the back of my mind, right? Because I'd always read books for children. I enjoyed them personally, for myself, even as an adult reader. And so it was always a little bit there, but I think it's once the kids started pushing me towards really actively thinking about story, that would be explicitly for middle grade readers, that I started to really do it.
Thank you. Okay, so you kind of both already answered number 2, which is tell us about your books and what inspired you to write them. So if there's anything more that you want to share about your books and the inspiration behind them, I guess you can share that now.
Chantel, would you like to?
Sure, I'll go first. So I guess it's a good segue because I was just talking about sort of actively thinking about stories. And so Muse Squad was born in a way that any of my other books, came into sort of in my imagination. And I was at a museum. I was at the Victoria and Albert Museum in London, which is my favorite museum ever. And I was there on a family trip, and one of my kids was using the bathroom, and I was waiting, for her to be done. And right next to the bathroom is this staircase, kind of nondescript, but it's flanked by these 2 statues. And I walked over to one of the statues, and it just simply said a muse. And it's just sort of the bust of a very lovely looking woman. And the other one was the same, a muse. And this question sort of popped into my head. And the question was, what if the muses had been children? Just out of nowhere. I'd like to say that the muses sort of dropped it into my brain. And I've never had sort of a story form that quickly in my head. So while she was in the bathroom, I was already giving them names. I was writing notes in my, like notes in my notes app on my phone. Like it was just coming together really quickly. So throughout that whole vacation, I was sort of jotting down plans for this book, and came home and sort of hit the ground running with it. But I love that happened. It's never happened before, and it probably will never happen again. And I like to tell myself that the muses somehow were involved in it. After all, muses inspired the name of museums, right?
No, I love it.
Yeah, I mean, it all seems like fate, right? And so I ran with it. And so that's where the idea for Muse Squad came.
Isn't it weird when that happens? Similar kind of with my book, where I saw a call for articles from a children's magazine. They're interested in articles about, or short stories about Vikings. So I kind of had this idea about a Viking kid in the middle school, and what would that look like? Kind of I always like the fish out of water scenario. So here's this kid that's going to go in, and his parents make him dress like a Viking, and kind of the classic stuff of mom and dad buying you this really ugly clothes and stuff. But then my brain like that just kind of started spinning and writing this whole other story that was like long, full form story. And so that's kind of where this came. And it was over the course of about a year I wrote it, and just revised over several years. It took about 3 years, I guess, in total to write. And maybe it gets faster after that. I guess, Chantel, did you write your first one, and then your second one just kind of popped out a little faster, or was it?
Well, it's a duology. So I had to sort of already, like when you sort of pitch that first book, you're already pitching the idea for the second one as well. Right. And if you potentially want a series, you start thinking in those terms. But I did have this whole plan, and I started writing, and it got very, very stuck. And then a new idea was inspired by something else I'd read, similar to, what happened to you. And I changed the whole thing. So I started from scratch. Like I scrapped 50 pages and started again for the second one, because it was a stronger idea. But yeah, for me, the writing always goes faster if I know how a book ends. And so I try not to start until I know how it ends. But I don't know if you have a similar approach.
Yeah, I've heard that before. You usually have a really strong image of the beginning, like what the first scene is really kind of fixed, and then the ending usually pretty strong too. And then I kind of put together the rest, the week sort of outline before I start really jumping in. Yeah. But throwing out 50 pages is a pretty big, I mean, you say kill your darlings, but that's absolutely massacring. 50 pages, that's tough.
But it was a better idea. At the end of the day, like it was a better idea. So you have to go with the stronger story. Yeah.
That's great.
Okay, so now we're going to kind of get into the folklore and mythology that you guys can use in your books. So in your books, you use folklore and mythology to kind of create the world for your characters. And I was going to mention that Ashley created the mermaid lore in her book, but she hasn't joined us yet. So we're just going to move past that and get into our first question is, have you always been interested in stories that are inspired by folklore and mythology, or is it something that kind of fell into when you were inspired to write your book?
Mm.
And maybe Sam first, because
Go
I
ahead.
think you made Chantel go first.
Yeah.
The first time.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, for me, I was really interested in mythology when I was younger. My parents had the Time Life like collection on our shelves, and I read all the Greek stories and things like that. And but I never really kind of connected it with middle grade until I read Lightning Thief, which, I mean, Rick Riordan kind of started all this years ago, and just got me thinking about the connection to Norse mythology, because I've got Scandinavian kind of DNA and heritage. So I wanted to kind of explore that as well as write this story. So it was really cool kind of, exploring my heritage while I was writing the book, which it sounds like, Chantel, you've done with some of your stuff too. And I just, sorry, go ahead.
No. Yeah, absolutely. Like for my adult books, especially, I was pulling from the history of Cuba, and largely working from a jumping off point of, oh, I didn't know this fact, right, about this place where my family comes from, and sort of digging in and finding story there. The main character in Muse Squad is Cuban American too, but the backdrop, well, it's Miami, and she's in a Cuban family, right, and she speaks Spanish and all of these things. It's very much mythology, and it's Greek mythology that's informing the story. And those stories have always fascinated me since I was very little. I had a very worn, like Edith Hamilton's mythology that I would just eat up. And I still have my copy of, it's not mythology, but you mentioned it earlier, Jessica, in the introduction, fairy tales. Like I had an old copy of Grimm's, which I still have. It's like a treasured possession. But as a kid, I would just devour these stories. And I love that these are kind of template stories, right? You see them recreated in so many different forms on television and in books, certainly, and in film and in music sometimes too. And so it's like, it's fun because it's like playing in someone else's sandbox, like, right? Like someone else built the sandbox and you get to play your own, story out in that sandbox. So it's just super fun. It seems to me like a very natural kinds of stories, for kids to get into.
Yeah,
totally. That goes well perfectly into our next question. Thank you, Chantel. So kind of obvious, but we're going to talk about it. What is it about the elements of folklore and mythology that work well with stories for middle grade children?
Yeah, I mean, I think that just the idea that we both touched on about these old stories, that kind of the idea that maybe some of this was actually true, and there's like some connections, like maybe the kids think that, when they're reading it, that it's close enough to reality that they feel like that could actually maybe happen to them. So it's really exciting to think about. And so like mine is, my character is not like a daughter or son of a god or anything like that, but she's definitely descended from these, great line of warriors. And just to kind of imagine that could be you happening. I think that's really cool for kids. But also just the mythology aspect. I think that it's just fun because these are, like Chantel mentioned, these are kind of these paradigm stories that have been around for a long time, and to be able to recreate them and bring and update them for kids, so they're kind of like learning mythology. It's kind of like a lesson disguised as a book, I guess. So
yeah, for me, I feel like they're just naturals in terms of sort of the magic that's inherent in them, right? Like magic and powers and people transforming into other creatures and all the kinds of fun stuff that you see, in these ancient stories. And I think the other thing that makes them compelling for me when I was a kid, and fairy tales too work in the same way, is that when you're a kid, you often feel like super powerless, right? Like you can't vote yet, you can't drive. Sometimes you say things to adults and they don't listen to you, right? And so a lot of these stories, as Sam mentioned, right, or don't necessarily feature, gods or, otherworldly beings. It's regular people interacting often, with those beings and getting sort of closer to that sense of maybe I can I can have some of that power too, right? Or I can make some kind of a difference. And especially, we can see it in Rick Riordan's books and in Sam's and in mine too. You have these regular kids who get suddenly gifted, right, with these possibilities. And it's so fun to play with that. And I think as a kid, for me, reading those kinds of stories, it would just first open my imagination, because you would think maybe it can be me too, right? Like maybe there's a little secret power in me, and that can be really thrilling to think about.
Yeah, totally. And I think that, using an existing mythology also helps, because when you're writing a middle grade book, you really only have about 300 pages to tell the story. You don't have like hundreds of pages like in an adult book where you can build the world and all this stuff. You've got to kind of, if you're relying on an existing framework that people have connections to, like people know about Vikings or have a rough idea of what that's about, and they know about Thor from the Marvel movies already. So I don't have to explain all that stuff. I can kind of jump right to the action and get to the action faster to get those 300 pages and not make it too long. So that, I think that really helps the middle grade for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, speaking of kind of knowledge that your readers will already have versus what they don't know about the stories that you're kind of adapting, how did you adapt the folklore mythology surrounding your characters in the world they live in to kind of fit the story that you were telling?
Go on, Sam. Tell us all about Beowulf and Grendel.
Yeah. So when I started writing, I just I love to do a ton of research, which is funny because when I was in school, I used to hate doing research. That was like my least favorite part. But I think it was because when I was growing up, and Chantel, you're probably in the same boat, where we didn't have the internet, we didn't have a lot of resources. We had my local library had encyclopedias, and that was like the extent of the stuff you could do research with. But now it's so fun, you can just go out, you've got endless kind of resources available. So I just dive into all the research I can find about Norse mythology. I read all the Neil Gaiman stuff on Norse mythology, and just kind of started throwing a bunch of stuff in the bucket, and just to kind of see what I want to use, and then start pulling stuff out and making connections here and there. So that was really kind of how I use that, and then combining it then with Beowulf, which is an old story, and updating it. I just combined, I guess, so I have the sea monster, for example, from the sea monster that Beowulf fights kind of off screen in the book Beowulf. And then there's this sea monster in Norse mythology that supposedly is so big it's wrapped around the world, and it's squeezing the world, and it's going to eventually destroy the world. So I kind of combined those two, and I used a lot of license, I guess. So I kind of explained that on my website when for the kids, I've got a guide to how my book uses Norse mythology and Viking history, so they can kind of separate, the reality from what I took license with. And I'm sure, Chantel, you probably did the same thing with Greek mythology. You probably tweaked it a little bit here and there to kind of fit your story, I imagine.
Yeah, totally. And what was tricky was, so I had this initial idea of, I'm going to write about the Muses. And then I said, well, surely someone else has done this. And then I found out that no one had. And so that's exciting when you think, okay, no one's done this yet, right? Okay, yeah, right. I'm going to try. But there aren't very many Muse stories in Greek mythology. They're just always sort of invoked as the thing that inspired Homer, the thing that inspired the storytellers or whatever. And so there are very few stories. So I kind of had a very blank slate with them. The ancient stories just give you their names and what their emblems are and what they inspire, and that's kind of it. So I was able to just really invent and give them personalities, based on these fields in arts and science that they inspire. I was able to play with their names and modernize their names a little bit, so that was a lot of fun. The other thing I had to do was kind of get rid of the gods pretty early on in the first book, because once you've got, right, it's a little bit like when you watch those Marvel movies that aren't about all the Avengers, just about one of the Avengers, and you wonder always at the climactic scene, where are all the other Avengers? Why aren't they all helping?
Yeah.
Right? Why is Ant-Man doing this all by himself? And so I had to sort of deal with, well, what are all these gods doing? And so I put them into semi-retirement. And I was going to put them in full retirement and just be the gods are retired. And my editor, Kristen Renz at Balls and Bray, was like, do you want to do that? Because you do have a second book you need to write. And I was like, yeah, maybe they're in semi-retirement. And I'm so glad she did, because I was able to draw two of them out of retirement, for the second book. but yeah, you have to adapt it, you know, to the modern story that you're trying to tell.
I love it. Semi-retirement.
Yeah,
They're
you're
chilling,
like
playing golf, and
yeah,
they'll come back probably.
basically. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's similar with Norse mythology, I think, because a lot of the Norse myths weren't ever written down because Vikings didn't really have a written language, so they weren't written down until about 1,000 years after the Viking Age. So we didn't really know a lot of the stories that is lost. So, and the ones we have are written by this guy that was, you know, a Christian, so he's kind of Christianized a lot of the stories and made the gods look like kind of dummies, kind of, and sometimes, and so you get the different lens on the stories too. So yeah, so it gave me a lot of license, I guess, to just kind of do what I wanted. And the Norse gods are more kind of like these super guys, like Captain America, more than gods, I guess, in my book. So yeah, little adjustment. They're kind of retired or demoted at least.
Cool.
They've been around a while, you know. Sometimes they need to take a break.
Yeah, right.
So you've both talked about kind of research you've done for the myths that you used. Was there any other fun or interesting or unexpected research that you ended up doing for your book?
What was fun for me was I knew that I wanted to set Muse headquarters in the place that inspired the book to begin with, and that's the V&A in London. So I also knew that I wanted it to be a portal story, and I've always loved portal stories, even when I was really little, right? Like Narnia, like just blew my mind, and I would go around the house like banging into the back of closets, like for sure I can get to a magical world, you know, through closets or like through these, you know, other spaces. Another big influence was the Goonies, which technically is not a portal story, but the kids do like find a whole pirate lair underneath a fireplace grate. So yes, right, like that fascinated me, that idea. So some research I had to do was, I mean, I don't live in London. I was only there for a little while. I visited a few times, but I was only there for a little while. So one of the fun things that I got to do was, again, using technology, as Sam said earlier, you know, to do your research. And they have all of these exhibits digitized where you can explore all of it, because I wanted to give the muses all of these portal entrances in the museum. So Callie goes under her bed at home and she closes her eyes, and when she wakes up, she's under the Great Bed of Ware, which is a 15th century bed on display at the V&A that could sleep something like 16 people. It's like a ridiculous bed. And it's like one of the treasures of the V&A. And so I got to assign all of them these cool exhibits that they can sort of pop out into, you know. And then for Muse Squad 2, which I headquartered in the Hall of Science in Queens, I got to do the same thing. And I went to Queens and I traveled, you know, like I explored the whole museum and got to pick and choose sort of in person, like that belongs to Talia and that exhibit is Nia's. And, you know, I was able to do that kind of research, which is always fun when you can do something in person.
Totally, and I wish I'd been able to do, I really wanted to go visit like Norway and visit kind of the Viking stomping grounds, but I had to rely on the internet for most of mine for just, you know, researching the actual locations and stuff like that. But I'm hoping to, you know, go there in the future, because I've got like all these other Norse stories kind of spinning around in my brain that I want to kind of write sometimes too. But yeah, I got to do, I don't know, I like to do this, I guess it's like method writing where you're actually like putting yourself in the scene. So I did a lot of that kind of stuff. So I have the scene where there's a car chase and they have to do this thing where the main character's in the back seat and her dad's driving, and they switch places going 80 miles an hour. And so I wanted to try to do this. It was in my driveway. I wasn't going 80 miles an hour, but so I'm kind of like launching myself over the back of the seat and trying to figure out, like, is this going to work, or what's the logistics of if somebody has to keep their foot on the gas while the other person's switching. And so that kind of stuff is just fun to make sure you get the details right, so that you don't have a reviewer saying like, that's totally impossible. What are you talking about, dude? Kind of thing. But so I end up doing a lot of that kind of thing, just real detailed research, and it's kind of fun to do that, and also just kind of dive into the details as you're going. I had a scene that I actually cut where they did the egg drop experiment. And so I did a lot of research on that, got to watch some fun videos. Mark Roper's got a really good YouTube series on egg drop, how to win egg drop experiments. I did a lot of research on that and trying to figure out how that all works to be authentic too. So yeah. some of it gets thrown out and some just, you're just doing it for fun. But
I'm just imagining your neighbors like watching you in your driveway. Like,
doing, yeah.
Sam's up to it again.
Crazy author over there, yeah, right.
Okay, I'm just gonna check to see if Facebook has any questions. Nothing yet, but I know people are watching. So thank you everyone who's watching. If you have any questions, please don't be shy. Put those in the comments, and then I'll ask our wonderful authors. But let's just get on to our next question. This one is about the writing process and kind of your world building. So did you have it all planned, at least like the basics of it? Or was it more of a, as you wrote, you kind of figured things out and what worked and what didn't work?
Yeah, I think for me, it was kind of figuring out as I go, because I had the basic story. I think I kind of wrote the story first and then worked in the mythology and stuff after to some extent. I wanted to try to layer it in so that it wasn't like I was like, it's hard to make it not like feel like a lecture, like you're in class. I didn't want them to feel like I was, it was a textbook on Norse mythology kind of. So I wanted to limit that. So I think for the world building, I tried to figure stuff out as I went. And I would just kind of come up with a character. Like I came up with one guy who rides a motorcycle and he's got no eyes. And it just kind of came to me as I was writing, like, what's the scariest version? So the guy's like in this car chase scene again. So the guy's like riding next to him on a motorcycle and he lifts his glasses. And I asked my kids, what would be the scariest thing that would happen if this guy lifts his sunglasses, and what do they see that's the scariest thing? And so they decided that no eyes would be scarier than like, burning red eyes or stuff like that. So you kind of figure that out and fortunately I have my kids to help me kind of bounce ideas off of, so they can tell me what they think would work from their perspective, because my kids are 14 and 10. So they're kind of right in that age where they're reading this kind of stuff. So they help me develop it as I go too. And I also shared it earlier, the first draft I shared with my son's 5th grade class at the time. And they all gave me feedback too on stuff that they thought worked and didn't. So that helped me kind of build in and adjust stuff where I had the world building, too much, like if I had too much at the beginning and they wanted more action right up at the start or whatever. But that was me. So what about you, Chantel?
Yeah, I feel like I had most of it down in the beginning. Like I front loaded that work. And I remember really vividly getting like old wrapping, like it was like Christmas wrapping, and flipping it to like to the plain side and just like laying it all out and like doing a whole like the whole story like in one long timeline, just to get a visual of it, because I knew it was going to be super plotty because it's an adventure and it's a fantasy, and so that has to be tight, and that's different from my adult books, which aren't plotted in the same way. And I knew that both books would hinge on a mystery as well, and it was sort of my first time writing a mystery, and you have to sort of write them backwards because you know the answer, and then you have to put in all of these like red herrings and like false suggestions along the way, so that the reader is surprised at the end. So I felt like I had to really plan it as I went along, and especially with both of the books. In the first one you do a lot of exploring in Miami and London, and in the second one it's a lot of exploring in New York. So I also had to sort of plot like where in these cities the kids were going to go, and what were they going to discover when they go to those places.
I'm trying to remember, Sam, if in our last chat you talked about having anything visually planned out, and I don't remember. Was it everything like digital, or did you have anything that was like visually written out near you? I don't remember.
Yeah, I used note cards that I just like stick up on my wall. And so I have like action chapters of like yellow note cards, and then white chapters are like some more expository chapters. So I kind of try to balance it. When you kind of lay it out, you see it like that, and you're like, oh, I got like 3 action chapters in a row. Maybe I can kind of break this up a little bit and release some of the gas, because you want to overall. My son was just doing this actually for his freshman class. They were mapping out the trajectory of a story, how it's supposed to be this nice kind of up curve to the climax and then back down. Or mine was like jump right to the climax and stay, and then drop. So it looked more like an EKG. than anything. So it helps me to kind of visually plot it like that. And I'm trying to do more of that because I tend to do more of the really, I don't know, pantsing, I think, too much as I'm going. And I'm trying to become more of a plotter so that I can have it, you know, the structure feel right.
I'm team
Since we're
plotter.
yeah, since we're talking about like writing and plotting and not plotting, I'm gonna skip to one of our questions about like your writing process.
Mm.
Do you have a process? Do you have to be in a specific like environment? Can people be around you? Do you have to be alone? Can you listen to music? Do you can't have music at all? You have to have silence. So what is it like when you're writing? Like what's going on basically?
Chantel, you want to take that one?
Sure. Well, I mean, there are a few constants, right? So like, I can't write with music or sound. I can write with like ambient family sound. Like if my family is here and they're doing their thing and making noise and talking, like that's fine, that fades. But like purposely, I know some people purposely listen to music when they write. No, like no, like all of that my brain just wants to listen to the music. It's not disciplined enough to be able to push it aside. So that's one thing. But in terms of sort of place or time of day or any of those other restrictions, I don't feel like I need any of those. So I don't have a process in that sense. I think it's hard too when you're a parent, right? Like, and especially if your kids are little, you're snatching time. You're just like stealing time when you can steal it, you know? And so no, I haven't put those kind of limits, you know, on myself. And then each book teaches me to write it, right? So some of them I have to very, very heavily plot it out before I start. Some I can plot a little bit more lightly and just go with it that way. Sometimes it begins with a character, sometimes it begins with an image. The research is different depending on the story too. So the process has been different for every single book. And none of them have been like entirely like super easy. Like I've never written a book and be like, oh, that was a breeze. It's never easy. It's always hard. But I think sometimes, you know, if you want something to be, if you want something to be good, it's got to be hard too. So in terms of that, it's sometimes it's fun and sometimes it's deeply not fun. I don't know. It's maybe too real, but it's true.
Yeah, I think whenever you're in it, you're in the middle and you're kind of, I don't know. I'm always feeling like I'm like the worst writer in the world. Like my story doesn't make any sense. I'm not making coherent sentences. And then I go back and I'm afterward and I let it sit for a while. And I'm like, okay, so that's not that as bad as I thought while I was writing. It always feels like kind of a struggle, but it's funny because Jason Reynolds says that that's when you can tell that you're writing good stuff, when it's like a struggle and you're like straining to get it out and you got finally get the words on the page. Whereas I don't know if that's the best, at least for me, I feel like it actually ends up the best when it just kind of flows and I, you know, can find the words. I don't know. But when I'm writing, I think that, like you said, Chantel, I love absolute silence. I mean, before I write a scene, sometimes I'll play a song or something to kind of get me in the right mood for that scene. And it's funny because when I was writing this one, I was trying to find some good Norse music, but it's all like so dark and heavy, and there's like these guitars and drums, and it's always the same mood. So I don't know, I could never get like I had to put some Celtic music on for kind of the lighthearted stuff versus the Norse. So it didn't really work so well. So I went with some 80s songs instead and kind of built a little playlist for that. To kind of put me in the mood for an action scene versus a different kind of scene. But yeah, for my process, I think, I think really the first part, like I mentioned earlier, is just doing a ton of research and getting all the ideas there. And then my process becomes kind of trying to put together how all the ideas are going to fit together then, because I have a lot of things that I want to do, but then they don't necessarily connect to each other in an obvious way. So that's kind of my process. But like you said, Chantel, when you're writing kind of a mystery, which mine is somewhat of mystery, it's fun going back and then layering in those red herrings and the distractors to kind of try to make it, you know, mysterious and lead people off track if you can. But you got to kind of get to the point where the kid really feels like they figure it out, you know, right before the main character does or right as the main character does, to really feel satisfying, I think. And that's hard. And I don't know if I got there in my first book, but that's what I kind of aspire to. Kind of that moment where the kid's like, yeah, I just figured that out too. Good job, main character.
I Do you have a favorite part, Sam? Is it a favorite or a least part of the process? Like, is drafting, revising, editing, dreaming? Like, what's the best and what's the worst?
Yeah, my favorite is writing the first chapter, because you kind of, there's like no restrictions whatsoever. You don't have to worry about plot. You don't have to solve any plot holes. You're just, put on the gas and you drive, and you're driving. So that's really just freeing. Just write that first chapter and just get a really good idea out there. But then least favorite, I guess, is every other chapter after that. Where you just have to kind of make it work. But that first draft is really hard for me. I like revising a lot, because I feel like that point I can actually, I've got stuff to work with. I don't have the pressure of like I don't know if many writers feel like this, or maybe they all do, is like you get up every morning, you're like, I can't write any words today. There's no way I'm going to be able to write anything. And it's like that every single day. And then when you finally have the draft, at least you've got something to work with to revise, versus just trying to create something out of nothing. I guess that's just so daunting, I guess. But what about you?
I'm with you 100%. Like, dreaming the book is fun. Like, planning it is fun. Revising it is fun. Like, editorial letters are not fun the first day that you read them, but they're fun afterwards. Especially if you've got a good editor. And writing that first chapter and writing the end, super fun. But the middle is the worst, because it's where all the doubt comes in, and you've got the whole thing's got to hold itself together, and you're not sure it's working. And it can be painful. I mean, there's good days. There's definitely good days, where you feel really proud, what you've done. But some days are like, I don't think like you said, I can't write today.
And that's what I tell kids when I do class visits, is that revision part is so important, because when I was little, and probably most kids are like this, they want to just write it once, the story or whatever, and be done with it. But the revision is where so important. And I give the example of Star Wars, where George Lucas, the first script, like nobody could even understand what he was talking about. It's so technical. There's these droids all over the place, and it's just, if you've ever seen it, it's just funny to actually read it, because it's so different than the actual movie, the way it turned out. But just the revision and working with different people to kind of get the ideas. And that's where, so I've got beta readers, I've got critique groups that I work with, and they give me feedback on what's not working, because you got to get out of your head to see what other people are seeing. But it's so important to do that revision part.
That was a good question, Chantel. I'm going to delete that off my list. Yes. Perfect. So you both talked a little bit about your characters. So talking about your characters, are there any ways that they have surprised you while you were writing, like where they just kind of decided how things would be for themselves? Or were they pretty well behaved? Like, did they always do what you wanted them to do? I'm not sure how different authors have different ways that they kind of work with their muses, Chantel. So were you in control the whole time, or were they very much aware?
It's kind of weird what happens. At least my characters do take on a life of their own, which it sounds so like woo to say, because I'm the one typing the words. Like, obviously it's my brain, right, that's coming up with it. But I there were several moments where I thought, well, Callie feels like this. And as I'm writing the scene, suddenly a line pops into my head that's the opposite of that feeling. Like, oh, maybe she's not feeling that way, right? Like, maybe it's a different kind of, sensation, right? That's happening here. And that happens a lot. And sometimes, like the book I'm working on now, it's a new book. It's not Muse Squad. It's another middle grade, but the character has evolved in my revision process a great deal, right? From a kid who was largely friendless because that's what he chose, to a different kind of character, right? Like, it was like he softened, as I wrote him, and I've had to go back and make sure that the arrows are lining up in ways I had not expected, but are better. So I don't know what that magic is, but it does happen. It happens to me, Adam. How about you?
And that's tough when you write a character like that kind of is friendless and nobody likes, because you want the reader to connect with the kid. But if nobody else in the story does, it's hard to get the reader to do that. So how did you make the reader?
He fought me, you know what I mean? Like, this is the book I'm revising. He fought me. I was like, no, like, this is not. And so, like, I had to reimagine the book a little bit, like imagine his character and his arc a great deal. He was a different just a different kid, you know, when I first imagined him and started writing him, and he evolved on the page, and I had to like, okay, all right, Frank, his name is Frank. All right, Frank, you're right. And I had to go back to the beginning and adjust things, you know, for him. And he's better. He's better. And
Yeah.
again, it sounds so like weird, right? Because it is me, but it wasn't my intention. It's not how I started out. And I thought I was in control of him, but then I wasn't. I don't
Yeah.
know. Yeah.
Yeah, and my main character started out as a boy. He was Eric T. Red at the beginning, the first draft, and now it turned into a girl. Because as I was writing it, I was kind of like seeing a lot of similarities to my daughter, who's 10, and the way she would respond to stuff. And I was like, that's weird how that happened. And just like thinking like this could definitely be like, you know, my daughter or one of her friends. So I ended up changing it. It ended up working, I think, a lot better that way. So yeah, that's, I guess, one way that my character kind of got away from me. But I'm trying to get more toward these character profiles that I hear other authors do, to kind of, you know, they write down a list of, this is the character's name, this is what they look like, these are the things they like, these are the things they don't like, and just try to have a real, you know, solid character profile, which I didn't really do in the first book, but I want to do that, especially writing the second book in the series. I want to be consistent across the two books. And I guess you've experienced this too, where you've got, you know, same characters and you've got to stay consistent, but then you forget, you know, in the first book, like what exactly they did or what they liked or didn't like. So you kind of rely on these profiles, I think, to not go out of character too far.
Yeah. But also what's tricky in a series or a duology is that your character, your main character probably is going to evolve also, like the expectations that they're growing in the next book and they're going to change. And so now you have them in place, and now you have to inch them towards some new goal or some new development of the self, right? If like the characters in Muse Squad were 11 when in the first book, and they're 12 in the second, and there's a world of difference between 6th and 7th grade.
Totally.
You know, it's just 1 year, but it's a lot happens in that year. So you also have to be consistently moving them, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of the way it's working out for mine too. And the first one, they're in 6th, they go to 7th in the second.
Yeah.
So there's like absolutely like no romance in the first one, but the second one, there's a little bit, you know, there's little crushes and stuff like that. So kind of try to figure out that, like, you know, what kind of boy would you like? And, you know, or, you know, just things I never thought about even in the first book at all, to kind of, you know, fit her profile. But I did have like scenes where the character did something and my editor said, that doesn't really feel like the character to me. And so I went back and changed it to kind of, you know, stay more consistent. So maybe that was another case where the character got away from me a little bit, and they decided to do something that we decided wasn't really what they would normally, you know, it didn't fit their character. So I don't know, it's tough.
It happens, yeah. And Jessica asked the question, so she must have heard this answer from lots of different authors. Are you keeping track? Are they mainly like, yeah, characters get away from us, or
mainly
is it just me and Sam? Yeah.
Mainly they get away, but sometimes they'll answer it like, oh, I'm completely in control and I never have conversations with my characters, and I'm like, okay, sure.
Dictators. You. They're just dictators to their characters.
Yeah, I've heard other authors say that the characters start writing the story for them, which I would love that. I mean, if my character wants to take over and start writing it, go ahead. Haven't had that happen yet.
I wish.
Well, as someone who plays a little bit of D&D, where I've had to create a character and then like my character is never what I think or aspire that they're going to be, depending on the situation. It's like they end up doing things that were not on my list. Like they just come up with it. And I think while you're writing, it's the same type of creative process where there's a situation, your character's reacting to it, and then they change how they want to react. So I totally get it. And that's why I love that question.
Yeah. And I think that's the way it works too. You like, even for us, that when we come up against something we've never experienced, we respond some way. And one of my characters is, you know, decides she's just spontaneously, she's going to just lie about something that she normally wouldn't, but she just in this situation does, and she regrets it later. And it kind of drives the whole plot, this one kind of uncharacteristic moment for her. It's, similar, I think.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So because Ashley never got to join us, we're probably going to end a little bit earlier. So I'm going to have a few more questions and then we'll get to the closing questions. So I don't want you to feel like, when's this going to end? Soon. And the viewers, if you're just joining us or if you've been here the whole time, this will be available after we're done with the live chat. So you can watch it again all the way later or watch what you missed after we're done. So let's see. You talked, Chantel, you asked each other what about the writing process kind of you enjoyed or didn't enjoy, but specifically about, I guess it would be the Muse, the most recent Muse book, Chantel, and then Sam, your book. Just about writing that specific book, what did you enjoy most about it?
What I enjoyed most about, and in Muse Squad too, Callie goes to New York to spend the summer with her dad and her stepmom and her new baby brother. And headquarters have changed to the Hall of Science very conveniently, and they have an indication that there is a 10th muse, and they have to find who this person is. So that's sort of the plot of that second book. But Callie also had sort of like a side mission, to accomplish this kind of secret from the other adult muses that she and the other kid muses, right, are gonna tackle. And to get this done, they need to keep secrets from a lot of the adults. And so for Callie, we talked a little bit earlier about having to develop your character in that second book, and now she's not always honest with her dad, right? And she is getting around the city, on the subway when he told her explicitly not to, and she's having to come up with excuses, right, and do the things that sometimes kids do, and then dealing with the consequences of that when she gets busted. And so that was very different from the first Muse Squad, right, in terms of how she's growing up and how she's entering into this adolescence. And that was very, very fun to write. I've got currently a 15-year-old and a 9-year-old. And when I was writing them, they were 14 and 8 when I was writing that book. And it was in some way inspired by those changes that happen in those years, right? That kind of testing your boundaries, a thing that human beings do naturally, right? And so it was fun giving that to Callie. It was hard on Callie, but it was fun for me.
And do your kids ever complain that you're stealing from their lives or putting them in your books at all? Or?
No, they don't. And it's been a really nice experience because when the first one came out, my oldest was still in middle school and she read it and she said, "Mom, this is so much like my life." And I thought, and she meant that in a really positive way, not her personal life, but like generally speaking, like this school reminds me of my school and her friends remind me of my friends, right? And of course it did, because I was giving these characters a Miami childhood in the same way that my kids are having a Miami childhood, in the same way I had one, as well. And then recently I started with the 9-year-old reading Muse Squad. We started reading it together because she expressed an interest. And she said the same thing, like in chapter 2, she's like, "Mom, this reminds me so much of my school." And I thought, oh, see, like that to me it was very heartwarming. It made me very happy. They recognized it and they thought it was cool. Like that was, to me, I felt like, okay, if these are the only 2 reviews I ever get, they're the only ones I need, because it suggested to me that it was accurately representing, what it's like to grow up here, to grow up Cuban American, right, in the city, and in our family. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Have your kids read your book?
So my son was one of my first readers back when he was 8 or 9, and that, like you said, best review you ever get. So he finished the early draft, and I remember I was sitting in the living room and looked up. He came in and just finished, and asked him, "What do you think?" And he didn't say anything. He just came and he curled up in my lap and gave me a hug, and that was like, all right, this is why I'm writing. This is the best review ever. So
that's amazing.
It was awesome. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
So I guess he liked it. But yeah, so I incorporate some of the stuff that I experienced with my kids. Like, I'm sure they think that when I'm driving them, their friends in their car, I'm kind of listening and just kind of getting their speech cadence and stuff like this to kind of, it's like almost like research, just to kind of keep track of what they're into and what they're talking about and stuff like that, because it's so much different than I think what we experience, because they have so many different things than when we were growing up. So even stuff like music, the way they interact with music, like we used to buy CDs or stuff like that, tapes, and and these are like all foreign concepts for them. So I have to kind of keep myself up to date on, what middle grade kids are using these days. But I think in terms of my favorite part of writing my second book, it seemed to, as compared to the first book, the second book kind of, for whatever reason, it just kind of poured out of me. And I don't know if that's if that's a good thing, if it ended up better. I haven't had anybody else read it yet except for me. So I'm hoping it turned out good, but it just kind of felt like the story just kind of flowed, and like I knew where I was going pretty much the whole time. I hardly ever got stuck. Whereas the first book, and maybe it's just because it was my first book, it just felt like I was constantly like fighting it to get it on the page, and second guessing myself and all that. So, but yeah, so the second book just kind of poured out, and I hope that it kind of continues, and maybe it gets easier. I don't know. I hear authors who have written 15 books say it's hard every single time. So I hope that's not the case, but you kind of figure things out.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like book 2 of Muse Squad was easier too.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, I did start off this whole thing by saying I chucked 50 pages of it in the beginning, but once I did that and had the story, that I wanted, it went way faster. And I wonder if it's not because, we talked about earlier about, we borrow from these myths and we're playing in someone else's sandbox, but when you're doing a series or a duology, it's your own sandbox, right? Like you built it, you know it well, and those characters are created already. Like you don't have to worry so much about them.
Yeah, you feel like they're
forming on the page. Yeah.
Yeah, you feel like they're your friends or something at that point, and that you're just like experiencing the story with them, almost. Yeah, and I read a lot of the reviews for my first book too, and that helped me kind of shape. Because it's always so painful to read the reviews, but I feel like it's important to, because even the worst reviews are like, there's usually like a kernel of something you can use there. Like there's something you could fix a little bit in the next book. And I don't know if you do that. I talk to other authors who just like have this widget they have on Goodreads. It just like shuts off all the bad reviews. But I read the bad ones too, just to kind of get some idea of what what I can do for the next one.
You're a tough cookie. You're a tough cookie. I'm one of those who avoids them. I try to avoid the good and bad, because I don't want to write to the reviews.
That's true. Yeah.
But I do listen to the feedback, and I think sometimes the reviews get communicated to you anyway as an author, whether someone sends it to you or your editor's recapping or your agent's recapping. The sense of how something is received, and you can't avoid them entirely either.
Right.
And you're right. Sometimes the negative ones are like, oh yeah, all right, I see that point. I will concede that, because we're all readers too, and we can be critical, but it's hard. Like it can be really hard. So I tend to stay away from them.
Yeah, and I think middle grade reviewers tend to be maybe a little bit nicer than adult YA reviewers. I've read some pretty mean reviews of YA books. Unfortunately, I haven't any of those on my middle grade.
Yeah.
But like kids are always so fun to read their reviews, and they're always so positive, and that's why I read them, because it's just fun.
Yeah.
So speaking of the reader's experience and reviews and what they thought, what do you hope that your readers take away from your book?
Well, for me, it's fun. Like I want them to be entertained, right, and have fun. And I think they'll learn something along the way, whether it's about mythology or especially in the second book, what epic poems are. Because Callie is the muse of the epic poem, even though she herself doesn't write poetry. So she's constantly confused about this designation. But I think kids will learn something. But really, I want them to have fun. I also hope that readers see themselves a little bit in Callie. I very purposely built her as a character who isn't quote unquote sort of exceptional, right, in any way. And she is sometimes surrounded by other kids, especially the other kids in the Muse Squad, who are really exceptional. And she's always like, I don't have any special talents though, or I don't have any, right? Like there's nothing, I'm not like a straight A student. I'm just like very sort of middle of the road average kid. And sometimes she feels really badly about that, right? Like maybe I should, be more extra or whatever it is. And Callie eventually comes to learn that just being Callie is enough, and having a heart full of love is enough, and having friends and being a good friend is enough. And I think the vast majority of us were Callies in the world, right? We weren't like the super, super gifted kid, and we weren't that kid. We were regular kids, And so often books aren't about regular kids, they're about the most exceptional, like the chosen one. Like it's always like, like that's always, the story. And though Callie is somewhat chosen because she's a muse, she also feels very like, why me? Like this, why did I get chosen? Right? That kind of thing. And so I just hope that regular kids see the value in who they are, after reading a book like this.
Yeah, and I think you captured, middle grade perfectly there. That's the kind of the normal kid who, and that's the same with mine, where I want people to see kind of the normal kid who gets to be a hero and see that, heroes are there's all kinds of different heroes. You don't have to be the chosen one or whatever, that it's, within your grasp to do that, to do something great. Because a lot of kids, like I think you were saying earlier, Chantel, that just feel like they're disempowered, like they can't do anything for themselves because they've got adults always telling them what to do. And so for mine, I wanted them to just see kind of you can accomplish awesome big things just by being who you are. So that's really what I'm trying to, but yeah, same as you said though, the fun aspect too. I love to write stories that are just fun, and I wasn't shooting for a Newbery Award or anything like this. I just wanted to write a fun story that I would have loved to read as a kid, a 12-year-old, 11-year-old, the same kind of story. So that's what I hope I accomplished with
Same
my
here.
book. So, yeah.
Same here. And I know, like, this too, like, when you're writing your writer's contracts too, like they have all these little things, like if the author wins a Newbery, they'll get like this, whatever, like built in. And I'm like, this is not that book, right?
Yeah, I know, right?
And my agent was like, shh, shh. I'm like, no, but it's fun, right? It's supposed to be just really fun. Like I want kids to be like really fun. It would be like peak success to me is kids like on character dress up day, dress up like a character. Like that to me is like, that would be the coolest, right? Did you think,
totally.
Sam? That would be like the coolest award to win, right? It's like if a kid loves your book because it made them happy. Oh, that's it. That's all of it right there.
Yeah, one of my friends from college sent me a picture of his kid reading my book. He said, this guy never reads anything, but he loves this. He stayed up past his bedtime reading the book. And so, yeah, like you said, that's better than Newbery Awards for sure, just to kind of see kids connecting with your book and enjoying reading. Because, I think it's kind of a dying art these days with video games and everything else that they aren't reading as much. But yeah, I love that when it connects with kids like that for sure.
And we all teary listening to you guys talk about how much you just like want kids to love your books. I'm like, it's so beautiful. Okay, so we have our last question and then just the usual closing questions. This is, Sam, you had to answer this last time and you're gonna have to answer it again. Okay. It's the question that we always ask at the end, and it's my favorite. So what is your favorite library memory?
Oh yeah, what did I say last time? So I think it was yeah, just going and we had this it wasn't even like book related really. We had this stuffed animal fair at our library, and there was like this parade that we did at the library because our library is always doing this cool programs, and my mom would take us to the library like every Saturday morning, and we'd like take bags of books so we could fill them up again every week. But we had this animal parade, and I won an animal parade with my stuffed frog when I was like 4, and it was in an old library that was a converted firehouse. It was really cool. I always loved to go there. They didn't have the pole anymore, which I was always disappointed about, but it was neat to win this animal parade. And then the books, of course, were cool. So that's my memory.
That's a good one. My hometown library was in Hialeah, Florida, which is where I grew up, which is a city sort of within Miami. And it's the John F. Kennedy Library. And I don't have any one specific memory of the library. I went so much. It's more like sensory memories of the library, and I still picture where the kids section was. And when I was going to the library a lot was right around that middle grade era. So it was all those like middle grade books that I was like Judy Blume and that was like sort of my era, right? And so those are the books I was picking up, and the memories of just like doing this a lot, like smelling the books and how they crinkled when you would open them. And then my other favorite thing was when the librarian would go like the sounds of that, like the boom, boom, the stamp. and then giving it to you and feeling so grown up, because like I had a library card and it was almost like buying a book, but not really, but it felt like, like I was making a purchase, some sort, like all of that, the sensory image of just going home with stacks of books and just devouring them and, dropping them off and getting more. I think it'll live with me forever. Like libraries are magical.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I just love hearing the stories. One day I'm gonna like compile them all into one long clip of like all of the authors and all of their library memories. It'll be beautiful.
That'd be cool.
I'll probably cry, but I love hearing that. Okay, so our closing questions. What's next for you?
Well, I just turned in edits on a new middle grade book that should be out next fall, perfect for spooky season. And it's called The Curse on Spectacle Key. And it's about a boy named Frank, who you've already heard about a little bit about, who loves science and he loves all things horror, like comics and books and Frankenstein and all that. And his parents move to the Florida Keys and they move into a lighthouse. And in this lighthouse, he and his Great Dane named Mary Shelley run an experiment, and suddenly a girl appears and she has no memory of who she is or where she came from. And so she and Frank have to work together to figure out what's going on with this wacky island and this wacky lighthouse, because there may be a curse on Spectacle Key. So that is the story I'm working on.
That sounds so awesome.
Excited. Thanks.
Okay,
My first spooky story.
It's like October, September next year, or do you have
I'm hoping they'll get it in for that time. It's my first sort of scary story that I've written, and I don't tend to like scary things myself. So I feel like I'm pushing like a growth edge here for myself personally, but it's a lot of fun to write. Yeah.
And for me, so I'm working on I've written the second one in the Last Shadow Warrior series. And so we pick up again. So Abby has defeated the Grendel in the first one. So spoiler alert for people who haven't read the other one. She defeats the Grendel, or so she thinks. And then at the beginning of the second one, she has a reason to believe that it's still alive and still out there stalking her. So she's got to contend with that, as well as being 13 and all the things that come along with being a teenager, being in 7th grade, and changing friendships and things like that. So, and lots more monsters from Norse mythology for her to do battle with, and some more secrets for her to discover. So Vale Hall is the school where she goes to school, and it's like full of secrets. So it's all kinds of new things she discovers about the school. So I'm hoping that we'll see that one. The first book came out in May. I'm hoping we'll see that one maybe around the same time Chantel, as yours comes out next year, but timing has not been confirmed yet.
Exciting. I'm so excited about both of them. I can't wait. So this is just like for those that are hearing you for the first time, learning about your books for the first time, where can they find you in the interweb world?
I am at samsubity.com. You can see my name, I think they're on the bottom for spelling, but that's my website as well, samsubity.com. And then, of course, my book's published by Scholastic, so you can typically find it in book fairs as well, too. I think a lot of those are getting started again this fall, which is awesome. At least my kid's school is having one, and then fall and spring. So that's the main places for me.
Excellent. And you can find me at chantelacevedo.com, and there are links to Twitter and Instagram on there too. And I'm trying to figure out TikTok, but that is a steep learning curve.
Let me know if you figure it out. Yeah, I'd like to know.
It's hard. The kids have it though, they know. And yeah, my publisher is Balzer and Bray, which is an imprint of HarperCollins. And so you can find it in most bookstores and online, and your independent bookstore if you've got one nearby. And at your library, of course.
Yes. And I'll just plug in there that you can order books by the authors from Mysterious Galaxy. The link is in the description of the video and in the comments, because I want to be super helpful and so you can purchase books by the authors. So I'm going to say thank you again to Sam and Chantel for joining me for this chat. This has been so much fun. Thank you to all of our viewers who are with us presently and in the future. We don't know you, but we're so happy that you joined us then and now. If you are interested in more fun programming, check out our Facebook events and our library calendar to see what we have planned. We have a mix of virtual, hybrid, and in-person. Our next virtual author chat will be Thursday, October 28th. It's going to be witchy fiction with Lana Harper and Juliet Cross. And if you get a chance, we have a very short 3-question virtual event survey. It's in the comments and in the video's description. Please fill that out. Let us know if you enjoyed this chat. So thank you so much, Sam and Chantel. I'm going to end the live stream, but I'm not going to end the meeting. I forgot to tell you that in the beginning. So don't feel like I'm kicking you out, but I will just say goodbye to everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jessica.
thank
Thank
you.
you all.